Who was the first ever Jedi Master that became a Force Ghost? The first Jedi to maintain their identity after passing to the netherworld of the Force. Greetings again, and welcome back to the archives. The subject of Force Ghosts is quite compelling, particularly because of how little we truly know about them. The basic principle is that when one dies, their essence disperses from the physical body and rejoins the vast ocean of the Force. When this happens, who they were, their memories, their identity, everything about them ceases to exist, as their life energy is transformed and given back to the Force from whence it came. But Jedi have been known to stand apart from this principle, retaining their identities after death, manifesting themselves as blue images to guide the living. They are no longer dispersed into the vast ocean of the cosmic force. Their spirits now reside in a mysterious and a blissful realm known as the Netherworld. In the lore and all of its history, this has been done dozens of times, but today we wanted to find out who was truly the first. This one's going to be tricky, so stick with us as we open a holocron that we've set aside especially for you, and search for the very first Force Ghost in galactic history. By all accounts, this is a very difficult video to research. Qui-Gon Jinn is the first one to master the skill of retaining his identity after death. Qui-Gon Jinn learned the ability from the Force priestesses who reside in the wellspring of life. Qui-Gon's connection to the living Force brought him to the birthplace of the midichlorians themselves. They allowed him to access the wisdom of the Force priestesses, who guided Qui-Gon along on his journey. Though we know that he didn't actually complete his training here and was only able to manifest in a limited way, it was Qui-Gon Jinn's voice, and it was only to certain individuals, not to everybody. Qui-Gon attempted to reach out to Anakin several times during the Clone Wars, but Anakin wasn't listening or shrugged this off as pure imagination. Though Qui-Gon's presence always dwelt with the Chosen One, he mainly communed with Yoda and Obi-Wan. This is what would ultimately lead Yoda to the wellspring of the Force, and would have the priestesses teach Yoda the secret as well. In Star Wars canon to this very day, this is still the only known method of transforming into a Force Ghost. You either learn it from the priestesses, or you learn it from someone who already knows. It is possible to learn the secret from another Force Ghost, as Anakin Skywalker would upon his death. But in Legends, things get a lot more interesting. The method of how one achieves this is very unclear. In the totality of all of Star Wars lore, the Force priestesses are a fairly new addition. Prior to their inclusion, Qui-Gon originally learned this from the Shaman of the Wills in Legends. Since Qui-Gon learned it from another living being, and not a mysterious Force entity, this indicates that the knowledge predated Master Qui-Gon, and was a technique that was known for quite some time in the EU. This is substantiated by several other EU sources. Not only have there been dozens of Force Ghosts all throughout the Jedi Order's history, but the idea of Jedi Masters vanishing upon their death was something of a rumor among the Jedi, and a pretty popular rumor at that. The knowledge was not widely known, but there appears to have always been whispers. The Jedi Order dismissed this as myth though they were very much aware of the phenomenon, as the Path of the Jedi makes mention of it in the final chapter. Grandmaster Fay Coven, the Jedi Grandmaster before Yoda, would write this: "Some sages among the Wills believe otherwise, holding out the possibility of existence in this world even after a Jedi has shed their physical form. Existing as luminous beings, such Jedi could retain their identities that they held before death, but they would be unable to interact with the physical world. However, this idea of existence stems from stories and theories, not reality, though we believe that all things are possible through the Force. As physical beings, we are grounded, and our understanding has its limits. Instead though, I think of these stories as metaphors for the Jedi Code's final precept: there is no death, there is only the Force." This skeptical Jedi Grandmaster believed that the stories of Force Ghosts are allegories for the final tenet of the Jedi's code. But she was sorely mistaken. In the margins of the page, Qui-Gon Jinn would make a simple addition, intrigued about the mention of the Wills. And with this, we have a fairly large EU reveal. It was likely this book that sparked Qui-Gon Jinn's first interest about learning about the Wills. This book that would lead him to the shaman that would teach him this knowledge. However, the other note at the bottom of the page is that one we care a lot more about for the purposes of today's video. It is from Luke Skywalker, who makes a long annotation. He talks mostly about his experiences with the Force Ghosts of Yoda, Obi-Wan, and his father. Luke writes this: "I first sensed Ben in this state, then Yoda, and my father. It meant so much to see them, but there seems to be a limit to how long a spirit can tether themselves to the living. I'm surprised that the Jedi of this era dismissed the ability as mere legend. So far, the holocrons I've acquired have contained references to Jedi more ancient, including the Jedi Galalong Tau, the Jedi Master Plowtop Sium, and Arca Jeth. All are said to have passed into the Force while remaining behind in the world as phantoms, achieving this extreme transformation through the sublimation of a body's organic cells into a state of pure energy. Luke's annotation is important. It proves that the power of the Force Ghost is not simply a single method that Qui-Gon Jinn discovered, but a well-understood concept that has been around since the earliest eras of the Jedi. The mention of Arca Jeth is one of the earliest Force Ghosts in all of galactic history. Arca Jeth was the master of Ulic Qel-Droma, the legendary Jedi who would eventually partner with the Sith Lord Exar Kun. Think of Ulic as his era's Revan, a powerful Jedi that embraced the dark side for what he believed at the time to be a greater good, but eventually for power. But back to Ulic's master, Arca Jeth. Arca Jeth was extremely renowned and was a part of a Jedi trifecta of himself, Voto Siask Boss, and Jedi Master Thrawn. In this era, these three masters knew a secret that no other Jedi did. All of them lived in seclusion and trained their Padawans in private. They lived all the way back when Ossus was still the Jedi capital, right around the era of Freed and Nad. And yet, Arca Jeth was not the first Force Ghost in lore. There is yet one more who discovered the secret before even him. Pinning down the first is a tricky task, as the histories get a little muddy when we go this far back in the Star Wars timeline. However, we can prove who was the earliest known Force Ghost to exist. According to our research, the honor of the first Force Ghost belongs to none other than Jedi Master Rajavari, a dark Jedi. The Jedi Rajavari lived around 25,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, when the Jedi were known as the Jedi Order and lived on the world of Tython, wielding metal swords. This was before the official establishment of the Jedi Order. The Jedi didn't even exist yet at this point in the timeline. The Jedi Rajavari was considered one of the wisest Jedi, a valiant leader, having played a pivotal role in the War of the Despot, and later when he raised arms yet again against the infinite empire of the evil Rakata. To say Rajavari was a gifted warrior is obvious, but one of his biggest claims to fame was that he was one of the founding members of the very first Jedi High Council. Rajavari was one of the first that changed the name of the Jedi Order. This had been the ancient Daibendu word for the modern spelling of the pronunciation of the word Jedi. However, while the Jedi Rajavari was training his first lore keepers, he secretly established his own archive, a stash of knowledge separate, hidden somewhere on Tython, which he called the Fount of Rajavari. The Jedi Master would soon become disillusioned with the order that he established, believing that they were to grow into a changing galaxy, that they needed to claim more strength if they were to conquer, more strength if they were to survive. From these ideals, he eventually embraced the dark side of the Force, finding the power there that he believed that he needed. And it was here where he intended to destroy the Order, which he had a hand in founding. He quickly amassed a large following, establishing a set of principles which ran contrary to the Jedi Code. These principles were all about honor in battle, strength of the individual, but the most important tenet was survival above all. Rajavari and his followers were vastly outnumbered, however, by the Jedi in their battle, as the Jedi Order drove them off with ease, holding them up in the Temple of Knowledge. It is here where the Dark Jedi made their last stand. Rajavari was defeated during the siege of his own fortress, but he would enact his final technique to retain his identity after death. During the Great Galactic War with Vitiate, the Jedi had returned to the world of Tython after their temple on Coruscant was sacked by Darth Malgus. Thousands of years later, a young Jedi student by the name of Naylan Ralok had discovered Rajavari's teachings, and he too fell to the dark side, enamored that the first member of the Jedi High Council had actually embraced this path. This young student then found the Fount of Rajavari and planned to use the power within to destroy the weakened Jedi. During this time, the spirit of Rajavari called out to another young Padawan and led him directly to the ancient Temple of Knowledge. Here, Rajavari manifested to the young Padawan, informing him of Naylan's plan to destroy the Jedi. Despite holding on to his ideals, Rajavari was not hostile to the young Padawan, nor did he want to see the Jedi Order dismantled any longer. He had only wanted to grow them stronger into a greater creation, and believed the emergence of the Sith was the Jedi Order's fault, was in some way his own fault. But in his long years, he determined that the destruction of the Jedi Order would have to wait so long as the Sith were still at large. Rajavari was never a Sith Lord, he was simply a wielder of the dark side, and he believed the Sith to be a plague. Rajavari believed that a chosen one would soon carry on his teachings to remake the Jedi, but that chosen one was certainly not Naylan. The young Jedi Padawan eventually ended up convincing Rajavari to let go of all of his attachment to Tython, and to finally become one with the Force. While it is unclear whether or not Master Rajavari was technically the first Force Ghost, he was certainly the earliest known Jedi spirit that we have a record of. It's ironic because the ideals behind Force Ghost is that their desire to retain their identity is born out of a greater selfless mission, in order to continue to guide and to serve students or loved ones. Rajavari was radical about strength and survival, and this led him to the dark side and the dark path. But he always had the best intentions for the Jedi. Rajavari was logical and rational, perhaps way too much, but he was not inherently evil. He vehemently opposed the Sith, and only wanted the Jedi to be the best that they possibly could to protect the larger galaxy. Only the strong shall rule, but with the Jedi ideals. In this way, this makes for a compelling and a complex character, and maybe an even more complex reason why he was able to retain his identity after death. Linger as a Force Ghost if you interpret it that way. And also, another great fact about Rajavari is he was obviously a fan of the Chosen One, and knew that one day, a Jedi would destroy the Sith. But anyway friends, this was a product of our own research. If you happen to know of a Jedi Force Ghost who predates Rajavari, please let us know in the comments down below. And something else I'm interested in hearing, what version of a Force Ghost do you prefer? Do you like that it's a piece of hard to find knowledge that basically anyone can learn, as we saw in EU? Or do you want it to be a well-guarded secret that one can only learn from a select few beings, such as in Star Wars canon, as we saw in the Clone Wars with the Force Priestesses? Let us know what you think down below. And as always, my friends, I hope you're having a truly great day.